What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball and New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrett G. Money Rattler. What's poppin' with you, bro?
What up? What up, bro? It's been a minute since I've been out here, man. The vacation was incredible. I went to Orlando, Universal Studios. Halloween Horror Nights is an event out there, and it celebrates all my movies and all the horror stuff. They had a Five Nights at Freddy's house out there that was fire. Art the Clown, the Terrifier was out there. I had a blast, bro. And every once in a while, man, in this crazy world we live in, you just need to take a visit to Disney World and to Orlando and get your mind right, man. And that's what I was while I was out there. I watched the Pelicans get absolutely smacked by the Denver Nuggets. That's a thing that happened. Then I also saw on Halloween night, I also watched a pretty close heartbreaker, but a close game. Where it showed some fight against the Clippers. So it was cool, man. I saw you holding it down. You did a great job. Shout out to you, pumping them pods out, man. I know it was tough going through those single pods and loss after loss after loss. But you persevere, man. You held it down. Great job on your end. But I'm back and I got things to say. So everything's on good on this side, man. How's everything on your side?
Everything is blessed. You know, Rashid Shaheed no longer plays for the same. There are a
No,
lot
he
of things
doesn't.
that have changed in that mindset. The Pelicans are no longer winless, but yeah, man. For me, it's always easy to come on here and talk basketball, talk Pelicans, just because like it's natural, and whether it's good or it's bad, the Pelicans are never ever boring. So with that being said, before we get too far into the show, make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, on X, on IG. That's no basketball, no e. Make sure you're liking the episode below. If you're not already, make sure you'll subscribe to the channel. So I alluded to it. The Pelicans have won. The ceiling is not falling. The Pelicans are not going over to 82. They have won the last two games. Now, you look at it, and on the surface, you're like, you beat the Mavericks without, Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving and Derik Lively, and you beat the Hornets team without LaMelo Ball and without Brandon Miller, right? From that end on, in your home. So, like, how impressive is that? But, like, today I want to kind of jump into, like, where the Pelicans are right now. Because I think, especially after that loss, and what we'll get into, especially after the news of Zion being out for 2 weeks and Al Jordan Poole being out for 2 weeks, I think the Pelicans were in a really shaky spot. Like, you get blown out 3 times versus the Celtics and OKC and Denver. I understand OKC and Denver, they're different animals. They come into the first 10 games of the season like seasons vets because they've been playing with the same crop of players for 10 years. I get it. But how you lost those games and like the lack of effort, I think it was really, really like teetering on a tarp spot where things could have easily gone sideways. You hear the rumors about, the locker room being unhappy, the coach might be on the fritz, things like that. I think it had the opportunity to really sour, and especially not even the blowouts, but as you know, being an athlete, it's not always the blowouts that really like tug at your heartstrings, especially when you're playing 82 games in a season. It's most of the time it's the close ones that hurt the most because you're like, man, if we would have just made this play, if we would have just scored while Victor Wembanyama was fouled out of the game, or if we would have just boxed out and got a rebound, like if you would have done certain things, maybe you would have gotten that win, and now the narrative's not you're 0-6, blah, blah, blah. But I do think that what I was impressed by was that there was some type of fight. There was some type of pushback, even in some of these games where, let's say that the situation was favorable for the Pelicans. And so I think that that's important to get to. Now, as far as the injury report goes, Yves Missi's dealing with some type of illness. He's been out for the last couple of games. He'll be out tomorrow versus Spurs. Jordan Poole's now out 7 to 10 days with a strained quad. Zion is now out, and now he's apparently has no value and is not being traded at all in the NBA, and he's now out another 5 to week and a half, whatever it may be. DeJounte Murray does post that, he got cleared from a medical perspective to at least begin ramping up, so that's good to see. You might see him January at the best and things like that. But let's stick with Zion. When you heard that news, was it here we go again, or was it like we've been talking about this summer? It wasn't necessarily if Zion was going to get hurt, because I don't think anyone on the planet would have gone to Vegas and put their money on Zion playing 82 games ever. But more so when he was going to get hurt and for how long, because that's where my head at. Where's yours at?
Yeah, I mean it's a yearly thing now. I think again we talked about this coming into the season and it was something that I said that felt wrong at saying it, but now it feels right saying it. Like I said, I think we saw peak Zion games played was that 70 game mark. And when he played 70 games, and Brandon Ingram played all those games, and CJ McCollum played all those games, and the Pelicans won 49 games and were knocking on the door of not being in the play-in. But of course, that was the year that the West decided everybody was going to play. And I think that is what you go into the season, hoping and praying for at this point, because I think, whether it's Zion, we've seen him change his physique. We've seen him change, try to add a little bit of this, a little bit of that to the game, even though, he still hasn't felt comfortable taking more threes, whatever the kid, like doing what everybody expects and wants him to do. You've seen him change the physique. You've seen him try to do the floaters and the things, and he's done things to take, steps in that, in a good direction. I think that, like, first of all, the way that he's built is just one of one. And when you put in that play style and things like that, that's just something that his body is just different. Like, and this is what you deal with. And I think that the years that, I don't want to call them wasted, but the years that he wasn't, all the way in on his fitness and all the way in on his professionalism, which he has spoken to himself, or spoken about himself, I think, you those just don't go away. Like the tears and the wear and tear that you put on your body when you weren't in the prime focus, your body wasn't your prime focus, like those come back, like those, like that just doesn't go away because you move on to the next calendar year. And so I think this is par for the course. I think, coming into the season, I talked about, like, this was a team that was supposed to be like Zion proof, meaning that, like, when he gets hurt, obviously you aren't the same team, but you should still be able to compete night in and night out, because of the firepower, because of what you thought was the elevated steps from Trey Murphy and guys like that. And so, now you've gotten to a situation where it has happened early, right? And so this gives the Pelicans, you've seen them, give them an opportunity to try to deviate and flex some of their depth, the depth muscle. But again, I think this is just something that Zion is going to deal with. The Pelicans are going to deal with, as long as he's a player for the Pelicans, and it's just something you bake in. It's similar to I hate to say it, but Joel Embiid, Ja Morant, like guys who miss games because of whatever reason, right? It's not just, sometimes it's not just body issues and things. Sometimes people get in trouble, and you can count Draymond being suspended for 3 or 4 games because of technical fouls, right? So you have all these different reasons that, like, you can't really count on players to play all 82 games. But this is just the Pelicans' first step, or first taste of life without Zion this season. And so, what do they do from here? We'll see.
Here's where I'm at with it. Again, like, I'm not sure why everyone's freaking out and talking about Zion's trade value. Listen, how many games have gone by so far? 7?
Mm-hmm.
What was going to happen that was different from the offseason in terms of his value? The fact that he's already missed half of the games that have been available so far, does that mean that people are like, oh, now we're going to trade for him? Like, I didn't think that was going to lead to that anyway. And so, whether Zion's on the team long term after this season, in 2 years, whatever that may be, I don't think that was necessarily going to be dictated about what happened in the first couple of games. Now, to your point about the team being built to sustain the injury, if you really look around the league, outside of like Nikola Jokic, if you look at a lot of the star players, even the guys that aren't, LeBron and Steph, that are older in their careers, a lot of those guys missed time too, right? Like, look at last season when you were looking at an all NBA team, you had to scratch off a lot of names in order to get to that 65 game mark. And for a player like Zion, regardless of what his physique looks like, I just think the way that he plays the game, if he's playing it at his peak powers on both ends of the floor, it's going to lend to those soft tissue issues because of the jumping and things like that. Regardless how many jumpers he takes, regardless how many floaters he takes, I'm looking at Giannis Antetokounmpo, who literally runs through people every single night to get to the rim 50 times a game and has not adjusted his game. And so, like, I just think it's his body type, to your point. And so then it becomes, how do you build a team that's not able to, that's not forced to change its identity altogether just because this player is not available, but also can coexist while Zion is available as well. And so we will get into that. And so I just think that, again, this is par for the course. It's never been for Zion. Again, if you get injury, it's going to be when you get injured. It's always been, how do you respond from an injury? How quickly do you get back on the court? Are you doing everything possible to get yourself in the best position available to be healthier for your team? So that right now is really the true indicator. He missed that one game early in the season. He had, the foot injury, the foot bruise after the dunk, and came back, only missed one game. This is what I'm looking for now after the injury. Are you out for 3 and 4 and 5 weeks, or are you out the amount of time that it's slated to be out of town because you're doing everything possible? That's what I'm looking at. But along the way, and to the point of building a team that can win when your superstar is only going to be available at best 75% of the time. The Pelicans have 2 wins. Neither one of them with Zion on the court. You couldn't say that a whole lot last year. You definitely couldn't say it a whole lot the year before. These were wins that were gutty, and yeah, you were fighting versus undermanned teams and things like that. But when you look at the series of games and you look how the games were played out, do you think the Pelicans are actually starting to find a little rhythm and get a little momentum behind their season after starting out in the depths of despair with Bane? Where do you think things at? Do you think it's a little bit of rhythm, or do you think the schedule's just light?
I hate to do it, but I'm gonna do it. 2 things can be right. Only a Sid deals in absolutes. I think the Pelicans looking a lot better in close games and keeping games close, and also like Derik Queen getting on the floor more and Saddiq Bey getting more opportunities. I think those 2 go hand in hand. I also don't want to lose the fact that they did play 2 incredibly awful teams. So much so that the Mavericks, I saw a tweet. I can't remember what I saw. It was one of the NBA pundits. We're talking about that this year's Dallas Mavericks are like among the worst in NBA history as far as offensive efficiency goes, and you can see it. You can see it from no ball handler. Yeah, you can see it. And so, the Hornets aren't really a beacon of success, even with LaMelo and Brandon Miller on the floor. And you took those 2 guys away. And so, again, I do think, it is so early in the season. There are 70 plus basketball games to be played. It's a lot of basketball game to be played. A lot of basketball to be played from now on. So there's a lot of time. Number one, like, the Pelicans were never going to come into the season with perfect chemistry because they were replacing starters. They're replacing bench players. They're bringing rookies into the fold. And, like, those rookies are now, one of them is starting. Like, they were going to be playing big minutes. And then one of them is a point guard. Like, they were never going to be the beacon of, like, offensive proficiency and efficiency in the early stages of the game. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. You couple that with the fact that, like, you bringing in a guy like Jordan Poole, whose game is more about he has to find his rhythm in the team that he's on for his game to start. You get more appreciation of his game, and you get the best out of his game. And then, like, Willie Green, just he has never shown a propensity to have the offensive, like, scheme set out early,
scheme
like
you open, so to speak. Yeah,
right. Like, he's never had that. And so, when you hear him talk about last season, like, we don't have any plays for Zion in the he's never, so, like, you never ever were going to be this cohesive team at the beginning. what you thought was that like there was a lot of talent on this team, and that in those times where the cohesiveness isn't there, you can get out there with Zion, Trey, Jordan Poole, Jeremiah Fears, Derik Queen, and like the talent can get you enough to where you can win some of these games until you get that cohesiveness together. And so I think now you're starting to see those guys play a little bit more. Like Jose has kind of stepped into the fold and kind of give the team kind of a calming kind of thing going on with him. And like the team is starting to figure some things out, right? They are starting to figure some things out. You're starting to see, Saddiq Bey be more aggressive. Obviously, Derik Queen is getting his feet underneath him. Jeremiah Fears is getting the team off to better starts than they usually have had. And yet and still, there are some things that you watch, and it's like, man, if you would just like box out, man, if you would just like rebound, if you would just hustle a little more, like this team could be even better, right? Like the Mavs game, they were up by like 14 to 15 in the second quarter, and I felt like the Mavs were ready to pack it in. Like they were missing shots. You could hear how quiet the building was through the television. You were there, so I'm sure you can attest to that. And it just felt like they were ready to, like the Pels were ready to get that 15 to 20, get it to 21, and then see where you go from there. And instead, like you watch PJ Washington come down and start out and round rebounding people and pushing people around. And it's like, if you would just put a body on him, like certain small things like that, and it shows that this team still has a lot to grow and to learn. And so the 2 wins, like you don't want to be, 0 wins, and those, you take those wins as they are, and you put them. Nobody cares. Nobody's gonna look back and say, well, you only won that game by this. You only won. The wins count. The wins matter, right? You want to string together as many of those as possible. But at the same time, like they shouldn't rest on their laurels or start celebrating by any means behind these 2 wins. You got Wemby coming through. Like you got some players that's going to be some teams that's not going to be missing, their best 2 players by any. De'Aaron Fox is coming back against the Pelicans. And so like that'll be more of a test because again, there was some bad losses, but I do think that the Pelicans are figuring some things out offensively. I still think there's one player, which we'll talk about, that is not figuring some things out. That is, for me, at least 60% of the reason why the Pelicans are where they are. But I do think they are figuring some things out. But you need to be careful and take these wins with a grain of salt. Like it just is what it is.
Right. You would absolutely have loved to not get beat at the buzzer by Kawhi, or to win either Memphis or San Antonio and be looking at like a 500 team and be like, okay, we still got time to figure this out. But unfortunately, that's not the bed that you made. Now, a point that you made that I think is really important is that when these injuries happen, you're absolutely right. This team, not only were they going to not start off the season with cohesion because it's a new group, 50% of the group is different, but also half the guys that are the returning rotation guys are recovering from some type of surgery. So a lot of this summer for Herb Jones and Trey Murphy was rehab, right? And getting back to that point versus skill development. I'm sure there was a little bit of that toward the end once they were cleared and healthy to have contact, but prior to they couldn't do that. And so it's not only that, but then you put all those things together and you take away the gravitational pull that is Zion, you could see why a team that's brand new, a team that's coming off injury, a team that's starting 2 rookie or has 2 rookies in a rotation, and a team that takes away its star player, why things would be where they are right now, right? And it's not to make excuses, but to understand how you got to this point. But like we've said on previous pods before, in terms of every team going into the new season, especially if you're changing a lot of your roster, has to identify what your identity is. Well, at some point in the season, Zion was going to get hurt, and the Pelicans were going to have to learn to win without him. In a previous life, there's a phrase that was always told to me: you don't have a deal in life until you hit friction. Once you know what's going to be the deterrent that gets in the way of you closing something or finishing something, you don't have a real deal. I feel the same thing about a team. Until you hit some type of adversity, until you lose in the playoffs like OKC did to the Mavs, until you find out what your weakness is, until you figure out what your hole is in your game or as a team, you don't really know who you are as a team. And for this team that's trying to figure out what their identity is, I feel like there was a lot of different variables that were not working to their advantage when it comes to that. Now, that being said, you still got to go and win. And so for these games, to your point, it wasn't so much how they won. It wasn't so much that they won. It was just more so the different steps that they had to take to ultimately get there, right? So Jose Alvarado, you talk about it. He hits I thought the way that he won the game was very telling for how the Pelicans coaching staff, how the Pelicans players can look at it and say, that's the team that we need to be. Grit and grind, throwing your body all up, playing selfless, to your point, playing with cohesion. That's how you got to win, which Jose Alvarado embodies. And the fact that he took the shot when he wasn't supposed to take the shot and he drained the shot, I think that's something that a team can get galvanized around and say, that's how we need to play. They came up versus the Mavs, second night of back-to-back, no Jordan Poole, no DeJounte, no Zion, no offense, right? And Trey Murphy's, not playing right now. And you win a rock fight versus a team that has a lot of length and a lot of defensive versatility. And so I think that the combination of how they got to that point was very important. Now, that being said, Zion's out again. Every media content is talking about how the Pelicans are the worst franchise in the history of all sports. They win two games. And so it feels like the locker room hasn't quite given up yet. I know every Pelicans fan, including the ones in the Smoothie Center that forced the arenas to stop pronouncing his name or announcing his name, wants to fire Willie Green. But let's put that to the side. What have you seen from him so far in these games? Given that, again, your star player has not been available for half of the games and everything else is not being available. What have you seen from him, whether it's good, bad, some in the middle, that should say, okay, maybe this is it's something that they can build toward?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I think he has been a victim of his circumstances in some senses, but he has also been saved by his circumstances in a sense because not playing Derik Queen at all until a blowout and until garbage time in a blowout game. That's not good. That's not good asset management, which you paid for to trade up to get him and things like that. But he hasn't had an opportunity to play anybody else but him and Carlo, and both of them come in and look like the guys who could have been helping out in previous games. And so, the fact that he's given Derik Queen the opportunity to get out there and play, and he turned the ball over in the fourth quarter of a game trying to hit Trey Murphy on that alley-oop pass. He could have taken him out. We've seen younger players get taken out earlier in games, not even in the fourth quarter of a close game, but anything like that. But he let him in, and you saw Derik Queen have another turnover soon after, and he didn't yank him out then either. Now, again, circumstances made it that way. You didn't really have nobody else to go to. But I think that for him to let him play through those mistakes, and earn even more trust, because he won the game for them against the Mavs. And so I think those are good signs, for them. But outside of that, again, I still have trouble finding, ways that he's, working to get Trey open more shots and working to get other guys, more offensive shots, open offensive shots. And it just seems like there's still we're this far into his tenure. And it's just difficult to see, where's any kind of development of the offense. You watch OKC, and again, they were missing a lot of players, and it just was like, hey, it doesn't matter if Isaiah Joe is in. It doesn't matter if this guy's in. It doesn't matter if this guy's in. We all know what we need to do. Oh, you running a zone? Everybody knows how to beat the zone. The big Jalen Williams and all of that. Same thing for the Celtics. Missing all those players, guys gone. They still had a plan of attack. even with Zion was in the game, it was available. There wasn't really a zone plan of attack. And to be honest, even with him out in these games they won, like if Jose doesn't hit a step back three, then where is that game at that point? And so that there's still a lot to be left to be desired. But I will say that it is good to see him giving these young players, again, circumstances be damned, but giving these young players an opportunity to play, and it's paying off for him. Saddiq Bey going for 20 in the first half and not shooting again to the fourth quarter. Again, those are things that's like, how did that happen? Like, how do you not feed the hot hand, not calling timeout to get the ball to Saddiq, like things like that. So again, these late shot clock shots, they have returned the dribble, the handoff, save us offense. But again, it's hard to get it together. I get it without Zion playing and Trey not being at his full power. But it just, there's a lot still left to be desired from Willie Green. Even with the 2 wins, I still think that there are things that he hasn't shown, even in those 2 wins, to be honest.
Sure. And I would agree. As far as the roster management goes, I agree. Like with people going out, it's made it easier to play other people. I'm interested to see what it looks like once those people return and what the rotation looks like. As the point to riding the hot hand and making sure you're reading the game. In the San Antonio game, Jordan Poole did shoot them out of the game and they lost the game. The next time around, Jordan Poole was pulled and they ultimately win the game because they put Jose in and they put Saddiq Bey in. So that's levels of growth. Again, I'm trying to be fair here and see both sides of it from that end. And part of it, and again, it's not just Willie Green. You could literally go to every team and every fan base, and everybody's got a problem with their coach, whether it's Steve Kerr, or it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Willie Green. Someone's got a problem. But like in this scenario, to your point, you want to see what you're being valued. And so again, like we've talked about all season, a lot of this experiment was, we are going to give you guys and you need to teach them how to defend, because defense is what you hang your hat on, right? I think what Willie Green is starting to figure out, either like you like to say, by hook or by crook, is that like playing these smaller lineups is not going to be the thing that works. Like Jeremiah Fears and Jose, or Jose and Hawk, or Hawk and Poole, like the lineups where you have 2 minuses as far as size or defensive capability is just not smart. And so you're starting to see more lineups, to your point, with Saddiq Bey, with Carlo Makovich, with Micah Peavy. Hey, he made an appearance with Derik Queen. That is something that, again, like you need to pick up sooner rather than later, because you can't let 2-3 games come by before you figure that out. Now, as far as the good goes with the defense, you're getting contributions from Jeremiah Fears and Derik Queen that otherwise I don't know if you would have get. They had defensive activity in college, but they also were the main option, and so they weren't required to give you everything on defense. Now they're not looked at as the main option, and you see those guys leading the charge some nights on the defensive end of the floor and bringing the activity. So that's a plus for Willie Green. But on the bad side of it, man, Trey Murphy, like the last 2 games, he's picked it up from the defensive side, even though the ball hasn't gone through the way that he's wanted it to. But like, it feels like his defense took a step back. And for a player who you need to have some type of leadership from on the defensive end, so that all these young players can follow, pressing the right buttons there from Willie Green hasn't worked so far. And so again, it's not all coaches. The coaches can't shoot the ball. They can't tell you to pass the ball in the middle for the zone. Like they can't do these things. You have to do them on the court, but you would like to see him tap on Trey Murphy's shoulder, and especially tap on Jordan Poole's shoulder and say, bro, you can't just go out there and not try, because then everyone else is not going to try too. So like, though, I look at those 2 things from the defensive end and say, those are still misses from him that you want to see if he can make work. Now, as far as the offensive end, you're absolutely right. We've talked about the Pelicans need to hunt teams the way that teams hunt the Pelicans. And unfortunately, everyone keeps being hurt. No Zion, no DeJounte. And so you're looking at these teams, you're like, at the end of the Dallas game, you saw a lot of pass. I'm not shooting it. You take it. I'm not shooting it. I'm not going to be the one. You saw a lot of that. And so it begs the question, like, If you don't have the bodies to do that, what is plan B? And what is plan C? To your point, what are you running to get other guys open? Now, and let's get into it. There's nothing you can run for Trey Murphy that if he's not going to drive to the paint, it don't matter what the damn play is, Garrett, right? Like if he's not going to go to the rim, you can run the best play in the world. If he's only willing to shoot 3-pointers and jump shots at 6'9" and the ability to jump out the gym, doesn't matter what the play call is. But at the same time, we heard this with Brandon Ingram. He was mad that he wasn't able to get shots. And again, you're starting to hear it from multiple people. But at the same time, part of that is on the player too. And so, like, what are your thoughts about you're running an offense that maybe is not suitable for who you have available, but also you've got Trey Murphy shooting floaters and 18-foot fadeaways and 1 foot. I don't even. It's almost as if like he has some type of allergy toward going to the free throw line or going to the rim with contact. So, what are your thoughts on part of the offense being around Trey Murphy?
Yeah, Trey. It has been a struggle for Trey Murphy. It's been rather jarring to see him kind of do it like kind of go out like that. And so I don't think a lot of it is Willie Green's offense. We've been talking about it for years. A lot of it is like there is no flow to it, there is no plan to it, but a lot of it is like Trey has been bad, and it's been like it's been wild to see because he looks so good in Australia. You can see that he's put on pounds and muscle and has contributed, like really focused on that. But he doesn't want to go to the rim. He's not finishing with power. He's not playing with the same joy and the same confidence that you've seen him play years and years and years ago. And again, this team is not built for Zion to be out and for Trey to not be at the top of his powers. And so you start to see some of these bad offensive sets because the player that everybody's relying on isn't driving the force, driving the train as he should. And so that's why the improvements from Jeremiah Fears and the level up from Derik Queen has been so important, and Saddiq Bey against the Mavs have been so important. It's because Trey hasn't been the guy that they can rely on night in and night out. If you would have told me that Herb Jones was shooting a better percentage than Trey Murphy from the 3-point line, I wouldn't have believed you. But yet here we are. And so it is. If he doesn't get going, to your point, anything Willie does is not going to matter because he has to be taking upon himself to be one of the better players on the team and in the league and deserving of the contract that he was given. Because now you aren't that cute third, fourth option. Like you are the driving force of this team. And if you don't show up, this team has little to no chance of success.
Here's the last thing I'll say on the offense. Again, you're building an offense that is centered around or built around guys that can get to the rim over and over and over. But when you look at what's available on the roster, again, there are a lot of players that are not. And you look at Jeremiah Fears, who's, again, 19 years old, and he's small, and figuring out how not to get his shot blocked once he gets to the rim, and Jose Alvarado and Jordan Poole, who's small and unpredictable from that age. You're relying a lot on, which you saw glimpses of, which I actually was happy to see. It was like, oh, that's different. You saw glimpses of Herb Jones getting to the rim and decelerating and going through Cooper Flagg's chest and things like that. You saw Saddiq Bey finding his mismatches when things are cross-matched and he finds a small getting down on the block. You see that. You're relying on that, but that's a lot to rely on for players that are not typically primary facilitators or primary options offensively.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that there could be more that's put into the offense, and the fact that the Pelicans need to find more easy buckets, and that's on them to create those in transition on defense as well.
Just to that point, and this is what I mean. It's like, the Pelicans are notorious for getting off to bad starts in the third quarter, right? You would think that like a third, like going in out of halftime, you should come out. There should be like 5 plays. That's like, okay, come out of timeouts, come out of anything like that. We, out of the offensive of the half, we're coming out. We got these 5 plays we're going to run. Every game will variance who runs where, flip it each side, but there should be 5 plays. And it just doesn't seem like there's like that to go to. It doesn't feel like there's that to go to. So again, to your point, it feels like there's nothing. You're relying on players to mismatch find, and that's great. But there's going to be times where people wall up against Saddiq Bey posting somebody, or Herb Jones can't turn that corner and get into D-cell. What else is there available for you? You bring in all these offensive gurus, and you just never find it. So again, there's a lot there left to be getting from this offense, and it gets too bogged down, and it's too much of a struggle when you have so many guys that should be able to get offensive to get offense going.
Right. And I'm not talking just about like right now, because obviously if you take the top 4 scores off any team, offense is going to look rough. But building a good team, like we've always said, is about finding different answers to the test. And I think Derik Queen may be an answer to the test. He's really come to life. Now, again, I think it's unfair to completely criticize the coaching staff and for saying, why isn't he more involved, things like that. There's a player who was injured since they got him, basically. He played a couple games in Summer League in Vegas, and that was it. So you didn't get to play through him the same way that Jeremiah Fear. No one thought going into training camp 18-year-old Jeremiah Fear would be starting by the 5th game of the season. Last year, nobody thought Yves Missi would be starting by the night, but they went into training camp, they carved out a role, and they were like, you got to take me off the court, and no one ever did. Well, Derik Queen didn't get that opportunity. So the first couple of games of the season are not only him getting his legs underneath him, but his teammates figuring out how to play off of him. Oh, this guy can really pass. So if I cut, the ball is actually going to come. And I think the Pelicans really need to lead in that. This was the number 1 prospect. Once the Cooper Flag dream was dead and the Pelicans dropped back in the lottery, the number 1 prospect for me was Derik Queen, not just because Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver had a relationship with him, nothing like that, because of the type of player that he is. Because when I look at a player like Derik Queen, and now the conversation is, well, trade Zion because Derik Queen had 2 good games and as a rookie. I look at Derik Queen and I look at his game and say, him and Zion play differently, but how you should operate is virtually the same. When you give the ball to Zion in the post, you give the ball to Zion in the middle of the floor on the zone, you give the ball to Zion in space, all of a sudden, all the other eyes on the court are looking at him, and therefore he's able to make reads and pull in the defense and play off that. I think Derik Queen has that same type of capability, not just because he's a big body, because he's such a gifted passer and playmaker and how he views the floor. Like, yeah, the bounce past the Jose in traffic when there's 3 7-footers there, probably not the best choice with 1 minute to go. The full court lob to Trey Murphy in transition when you're only down 1, probably not the best play. But the fact that you're thinking to make that play is something that's new that you haven't seen from the Pelicans roster in quite some time. And so talk to me about what you've seen from Derik Queen and how do you see his role continue to evolve as the season goes on?
Yeah, man. Derik Queen is a player. He is a guy. And I think the same things that I was saying about Jeremiah Fears and what I didn't want from Jeremiah Fears, which was slowing down, which was, trying to contain and be a little bit more of the traditional what point guards think. I feel the same way about Derik Queen. Like, yeah, those 2 turnovers were ill-fated and ill-caused, but don't stop thinking that way. Like, don't stop processing the game that way. I don't want that to stop. He'll learn, the NBA speed. He'll learn the NBA, what you can do, what you can get away with. But the fact that his brain is there, right, and he's daring enough to make those passes. Jeremiah Fears the same way. He makes a lot of daring passes where it's like, okay, the fact that you're thinking that way lets me know that like you're ahead of the game, right, and you want to push the ball and get the plays in, and get the points, the early points and the quick points and the easy points. That's a really good thing to have. I think him and Zion, it's funny that you bring those 2 guys up. They have a lot in common. One of the things that they have in common is that I think this coaching staff and coaching staffs previous, before, and now with Derik Queen, I think, and really honestly, like a lot of basketball pundits, they see a body type and they think that this person is supposed to play a certain position. And I don't think that's true for Zion. I don't think Zion's a power forward. I think Zion's a guard. We've talked about that multiple times. I don't think Derik Queen's a center right now. He's a power forward. And again, I tweeted about this. It's not because he's bad defensively, because he plays a very smart brand of basketball, of defensive basketball. It's why you see him get 4 steals in a game, and you see him get timely steals and things like that. He has a Nikola Jokic type of game. You talk about offensively, but defensively as well, right? Jokic is not the greatest defensive player, but people don't really try him a lot because he has quick hands. He can get you on the way up. He might not be the shot blocker, but he'll be a deterrent. He'll annoy you as you try to go up. He'll use his body to fight you, but and that's the way he plays defense. Derik Queen is the exact same way. I think Derik Queen just has to learn the NBA speed and learn, because he has defensive instincts. I just think that he has to learn the speed and learn, hey, you can't help all the way over. You and come. I think you saw a lot of that with the rim protection issues where he was out there at the 5. But and I think that's going to get better as he plays more time. But I think now he'd be best with a Carlo behind him, a Yves behind him, somebody who will go over there and make that he can help on defense. And we've seen that a lot. But offensively, bro, he's a vet masquerading as a rookie. Like he's a veteran player masquerading as a rookie. I don't think people understand how smart and how good of a play he made to win the game against the Mavericks. Because that play was supposed to be a dribble handoff to Trey Murphy. He was supposed to hand it off and roll. Basketball IQ is you play the situation, you don't play the play, right? He could have handed that ball off. Trey had been struggling that's what the call is. Go to your best player on the floor. He did not hand him off. He faked the handoff because he knew Daniel Gafford will be leaning towards going to help on Trey. Fake the handoff, but that's not where it ends. You 1-2 dribble, power dribble over Daniel Gafford and go for the dunk. That's the most important part. Yves Missi, if you're listening, go for the dunk. Go for the dunk. Carlos, go for the dunk. Like when you got the runway, go for the dunk, make them foul you. That was such a veteran play, man. And I think like that is the type of basketball processing that some of the basketball geniuses that we've seen. That's the type of processing that they have. And I think the thing that makes Derik Queen so good right now is his craftiness. He might not be that run up and down the floor athlete like a Yves Missi or Carlo or anything like that. But what he has is unorthodox athleticism, where he's big, but he's quick on his feet, and that craftiness that he uses to get to you saw it. He was a free throw magnet in that game against the Mavs and really against the Hornets. Like he got to the line because he's so unorthodox. They don't have a lot of starting bigs who are used to guarding that kind of unorthodox athleticism, let alone backup bigs. And so you see him really capitalizing on that and getting to the line and things. And that's going to get him at the line and have him at the line a lot, which helps the Pelicans as well as helps him, in his numbers and things. So there's just a lot to like about Derik Queen. And I think as he gets more minutes and more opportunities, he'll be a lot better and get a lot better. But I think it shows why the Pelicans were so enamored with his skill and what he could do for this team and how he fits into this team. And he's exactly what this Pelicans team has been missing for a while now, right? Like that big body scorer, bucket getter, hub. That's not just Zion as in wide, right, and big, but tall as well.
Right. Couple things though on what you just said. Like, first off, I had a really good vantage point to that play because they were coming to that play over and over and over. And there was a couple times the guys I was sitting next to, I said, why doesn't he turn the corner? Because again, nobody was looking to go to the rim. And I don't know if and you and I talked about this off the pod. I don't know if it was reluctancy to attack the rim or setting him up for later in the game when you ultimately do the thing that he you've been going the opposite of what you've been going through the all game. And to your point, that's veteran type thinking that this is a marathon of a game, not a sprint. So if I do the same move over and over and over, you're going to play that move eventually, and I got something for you when it matters. I don't know if it's that. I don't know if I'm giving him too much credit, but I was looking at it all game. And so to your point, I couldn't agree more from the defense. We said it in the offseason. When you watch his tape, it's not that he's incapable as a defender. A lot of times just he wasn't in the correct shape, or he wasn't it had enough energy to give everything on both sides of the front. Not because he didn't know what was going on. And to your point about him being younger and fit certain body type, I never thought he was a center just because I think he plays more like a power forward. But also, and he talked to it, he's like, right now, he's vertically challenged, and he's never going to be the athlete Carlo or Yves is, and you don't need him to be. But right now, what the bigger guys that are guarding him have against him is NBA strength, grown man strength. So even though he has size, you saw Cooper Flag, who everyone touted his size as a 19-year-old coming to the league, being grown man-ish. That doesn't mean you don't get punked by men that are 10 years older than you.
Herb put that shoulder in his chest.
Exactly.
Herb not even a big
old
old
like
dude,
weight is not everything, right? And some of it is just strength that you build up over the years and knowledge that you've been on it that I think is going to come with his game. And so I couldn't agree more. I think more and more the thought process that like him and Zion can't coexist, I have never, ever, ever subscribed to. I think Zion can play with the stretch big. I think Zion can play with the rim runner. I damn sure think he can play with a smart type hub who can make big to big passes and get him open shots too. And so when Zion does get available, I'd like to see more. You saw it the last time the Pelicans played the Spurs, him and Derik Queen going at Wemby together in different ways and giving them different looks and different body type, because no one's as tall as Wemby, but those are the two stronger guys that can make things difficult. And so it's not for Willie Green and for the staff. It's not when people are down, what do we do? Because your choices are made for you. It's when people are up and you got 12, 13 guys that you've played in the last 5 games, what decisions do you make then? For me, again, with Zion out, I would start Derik Queen, but the Pelicans have won without it. It's not so much if you start the game and you close the game. And Derik Queen's been on the floor every time the Pelicans go to close the game, and that's a better indicator of where you're going to be, especially as a rookie in game 7 of the season when you're 0-6. That's a better indicator of where you're going to be than it can be if you start the game or not. And so I think Derik Queen's growth, I think his fit on this team is starting to take place. His legs are getting underneath him. And so I just want to see more and more things go through him, especially while the Pelicans are down all these weapons. Now, Gary, we got to talk about Saddiq Bey. We talked about this summer. Saddiq Bey would be one of those acquisitions that people would look around the league and be like, wow, Saddiq Bey is on the Pelicans? Where did he get there? Not only did he win the game for the Mavericks, I know it's early. I'm not a hot take person. But is it too early to say that in that Jordan Poole and Saddiq Bey trade, Saddiq Bey is almost just as good of a get as Jordan Poole? I'm not saying they're the same player. They bring you two completely different things. But in terms of what this Pelicans roster needed and the importance that you've already seen in the 8 games you've seen so far of what Saddiq Bey can bring, especially now that he's healthy, is he just as valuable of a get?
Well, I would say Saddiq Bey has probably been the most consistent Pelican who has played this season. I think, he something else he is exactly what this team needed, like literally everything. You needed shooting. You needed toughness. You needed bigger bodies. You needed defensive guys who can stand people up. And you got all 4 of those things in one guy. And that he is, if not as important as Jordan, because again, what Jordan Poole brings you, and you're going to need that, right? That scoring in bunches, right? The streaky scoring in bunches and the shooting and the volume 3-point shooting. You need all of that from Jordan Poole. But if Jordan Poole is in foul trouble, you can bring a like-bodied guy in like Jeremiah Fears. You can bring a Trey can do some of that scoring for you. You don't have that. He is like skinny, like a skinny Zion. Like as far as the body frame goes, like he's a big guy that can stand people up. And listen, he is an NBA veteran. He has the grown man strength and the veteran know-how. And he is so confident in that shot. And I think the thing that you saw in that Mavs game that makes him such a good get is that if you try to hide like smaller guys on him, he's posting them up. He's taking them to the post and he's giving them the body, giving them the shoulder work. He's doing what he need to do to make you pay for that decision. And that is so needed on this team because there's just so many like thin guys, like thin, like bodied guys, right? Like who you could, maybe one is 6'8" and maybe one is 6'4", but like they are very similar in frame. Whereas Saddiq Bey is just this whole other type of player that you need to play. And he is so unique and unorthodox in his play that like you don't really know. You try to body him up with a big guy and he's at the 3-point line hitting 4 out of 4 to start the game off, at the 3-point line. Or you try to slide a small guy on and he's in the paint, not only getting to the rim, but getting to the free throw line, right? He's a guy that is, he's getting to that line. And when you think about all the things that he brings to this particular Pelicans team, what you've been begging for years, especially when you've been talking about who's going to be the Najee replacement, right? Who's going to be the guy to come in and be the tone setter, the grown adult on the floor, the defensive guy, the wing, the big wing who can take up some of those spots, hit the big shots, things like that. Like you've been searching for that guy since Najee Marshall, left the team. And so now you got Saddiq Bey who comes in and he's probably an upgrade over Najee Marshall as far as the type of player that he is and what he can do. And he's just been so consistent this season that when you look at that trade and you say, yeah, you got off CJ McCollum. By the way, ask Washington Wizards about, what CJ McCollum had. It's not great. It's not going great for CJ in case anybody. I know they are not watching the Wizards game. It's not going great for CJ in Washington. But when you think about, you added an extra year of money on with Jordan Poole. He's already had a 30-point game. But then you also got Saddiq Bey, who literally is a hand and glove fit for your team, your roster, and like the situation that you're in, because he's building up his value the same way the Pelicans came in this season trying to build up their value. It's a hand and glove fit. And I think, Saddiq Bey is, if not just as important, more important than getting, Jordan Poole in that trade. Not saying that he's the better player than Jordan Poole, but this team needed a Saddiq Bey. You needed him when everybody was healthy. You for sure need this guy now. And so you've seen the results from it. So I don't think it's that crazy of a take.
I mean, first of all, no offense to the knife. Saw Najee Marshall the other night. He is definitely an upgrade because not just from what you bring from an offensive bag. Again, I didn't know Saddiq Bey had some of this offensive weaponry in his bag because some of the things he wasn't showing on the Hawks, he wasn't showing on the Pistons. I guess he's grown as well. Again, he's still a young player. He don't sound like it when he talks. You'd be like, damn, that's a grown ass man. But he's still a young player too, and so he's still growing. And I think he has a different look on the game because he was removed for the game from the year, and now he's playing with a sense of I'm back. I get to play the game I love, and you're seeing that. And for a team that's so young and that's looking for that type of leadership, I think it's important. So not only did you bring that type of piece, like you said, but like Saddiq Bey ain't no like okay, he's a shooter every now and then. This man has made like more threes than the majority of the Pelicans roster have in their career. So like he's a true shooter, and so he's not going to fold because he misses 2 threes in a row. He's going to shoot the third one and the fourth one and the fifth one, and that's what you needed all together. So you look at that, you look at the fact that he's been involved in some of the closing games as well, not out of necessity and now in necessity, but those are the things you have other players you feel comfortable saying, this guy doesn't have it, we're going with this guy, whether it's her, whether it's Jordan Poole, whether it's Trey Murphy, or whoever it may be. I think that gives you more options to go to. And I think Saddiq Bey has been such a good get so far for the Pelicans. So another game tomorrow versus Spurs. The Spurs have a back-to-back playing versus the Houston Rockets today. What are your keys going into this one? You got a little momentum. I think if you win this one, there's even more belief that is brought up. And I don't know if a loss necessarily like deters you from that, but I think that stacking a win with a reasonably healthy team versus a team that's going places this season, I think that gives you a different boost if you're able to do that. So what are some of the things that you're looking for out of this game?
First thing, if I'm a coaching staff, first thing I'm going to do is put on that Boston Celtics game. This team also was off a back-to-back. You guys were sitting at home for 2 days. They came into the building and ran you out of the gym. Yeah. Ran you out the gym. The Rockets, the Spurs are playing the Rockets tonight as of Friday. Y'all have been sitting at home since not sitting at home, but sitting in San Antonio. We're not a far flight from Dallas to San Antonio. Mm-hmm. You've been in San Antonio for at least 2 days. Getting your rest. There's no way in the world this team should out hustle you and outrun you. Now, Wemby might be Wemby, and he might put up 40, 50, and De'Aaron Fox might come back and do what he does. But there should be no reason that this team out hustles you and out rebounds you. Out hustles you and outruns you. So the Pelicans need to get up and down the floor. They need to play with speed. They need to run this team because they'll be coming off of a back-to-back, and it'll be De'Aaron Fox's first game coming off of his hamstring injury. So you want to run it and test that hamstring. And when you find, when you're on the defensive side of the ball, communicate. You have to communicate. Wemby is not the guy to just be, going under screens, and one guy is playing over the screens, and now Wemby then slipped and he will embarrass you. There has to be defensive consistency and communication on both sides of the floor. Rebounding, when you are playing against Wemby and when you're playing against the Spurs offense, you have to be able to get up and down the floor, run this team up and down. I don't know how many times I'm gonna have to ask for it. If Trey Murphy could come to the season, could start the season at any point in time, you had 1 or 2 good games. Whenever you're ready to take this team is looking for someone to drive this ship with Zion. Now you can hate Zion all you want, you can want to trade him all you want. Last time you saw him play, he was putting up 25, 26 points, 8 rebounds, 7. You got to replace that. You got to replace those numbers. It's been Jeremiah Fears. It's been Saddiq Bey. It's been Derik Queen. It's been Jose Alvarado. At some point, it has to be Trey Murphy. Some point, it has to be Trey Murphy. So if Trey can get it going, can get it up and going in this game, they get up and down the floor and run, and they communicate defensively. This is the Pelicans have been blown out in a lot of games, but in 3 of their games, but like they've been in some heartbreaking and some close losses, and it's not for a lack of talent on the floor. It's more because they've lacked fight, they've lacked effort. If you just bring effort, this team has enough to match up with the Spurs just off effort alone, and then you can see where that takes you in the full quarter, like it did versus Charlotte, like it did versus Dallas. And so if you come in with effort and you come in and communicate defensively, and you can get something out of your second in command, you're now number 1 in command. I think the Pels have a good chance against this team coming off a back-to-back.
I look at a couple things. When I watched the first San Antonio game, again, I want to say Wemby is like one of the wonders of the world, because you watch him and you're like, how did he get there so fast? Like, he was just at the half court line. How did he block my shot for the 9th time today? But in that game, and the reason why the Pelicans were in that game, and the reason why the Pelicans should have won that game after Victor Wembanyama fouled out, is because Zion was relentless. He got blocked by Wemby like 5 times. It did not matter. He kept going over, and that's how you have to treat shot blockers. You have to keep testing them and make them foul out. And with Zion not available, you talk about Trey Murphy, this is the game. At some point, you got to welcome to the season. What better game than not to start going to the rim versus Victor Wembanyama? Because if the Pelicans just play on the 3-point line, the San Antonio Spurs are the second best defensive team in the league, led by a generational, maybe all-time talent at the defensive end. If they just try to rely on a 3-point shot without Jordan Poole, without Zion creating the shots, without DeJounte Murray creating the shots, this is not going to be a pretty game. And so they got to, the same way the Mavericks are a good defensive team and the Pelicans kept forcing the issue, they've got to force the issue to create good shots, because if not, if Trey just wants to dribble and step back, I can see this being a long one. So 2 good games in a row, to your point, where you saw the effort. You saw not just the effort go from first quarter to second quarter, third quarter, still whatever. You saw the Pelicans get leads in these games, and then you saw the Pelicans lose the lead in these games. That's what really has been the domino for the Pelicans so far this season. They get leads or they're in games, and then that run comes, and all of a sudden they let go of the rope, right? It's like, oh man, here we go again. We're down 20. Oh, wait, we're down 30. Continuing that effort, even when the shots go in, to give yourself opportunities to stay in the game. That's what you've done the last 2 games. That's what you did versus the Clippers, even though you lost. That's how you need to win. Can you carry what your identity should be to a game versus a team that is going somewhere and that has star power? That's what it's very simple from that. You're down a bunch of bodies. Every team is down a bunch of bodies. People talking about Zion's out. LeBron hasn't played a game. De'Aaron Fox is just welcome to this. Like, literally go through every single roster. Anthony Edwards is out. Everybody's missing games right now. But people are still continuing to fight with their team because teams have identities. This is another check for, can you figure out what yours is? And so it's very simple for me from that end. How the Pelicans come out in the early quarters, but more so how they respond after the runs on the roads is what I'm looking for. So with that being said, what you got left for the people, Gary, as we look forward to the next game?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Yeah, man, it's you put two in the win column. It's still not a great start to the season, but if you could go in and find a way to win this game, and then start to build a little momentum that way, and I think that will go a long way. But I think what you're seeing from the rookies is the bright spot right now, and I think you need to lean more into them. And I think that's what the Pelicans are. By hook, like you said, by hook or by crook, are going to have to do, because those guys are ready to play, and hopefully Trey Murphy, is ready to get something going against Wemby tomorrow night. So as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_basketball no E. That's on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your socials. Most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans Basketball, and we'll see you guys in the next one.